Welcome to Our Last Meal, the podcast on grief, loss, and food. I'm your host, Andrew, and every episode I talk with a guest about someone important in their life, someone that they've lost, and what role food played in their relationship. This week I talk with musician Virginia Luis about punk music, family dinners, sushi, and grief. I had a great time talking with her, and I also want to wish her a happy birthday on August the 30th. Make sure you stay tuned to the very end of the episode as well, because we're going to have a special performance of one of her songs. As always, the podcast does touch on sensitive topics such as death, grief, and loss. Please be mindful as you listen. Hello and welcome to Our Last Meal. I'm your host, Andrew, and my guest this week is musician Virginia Luis. Virginia is based in Nashville, Tennessee by way of Austin, Texas. She has a background in audio engineering and playing as part of a band, but she's now focused on her solo career and just recently released her newest single, Lust for Life. Virginia, welcome.
Awesome. Hi.
So thank you so much for being on. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk.
Yes, I'm excited. I was super flattered whenever you reached out, and the podcast is awesome, so I'm super stoked to be here.
Well, thank you so much. I was telling you earlier, I found you, just scrolling through TikTok. I saw a video you'd posted about getting ready for a show, and so that kind of led me into, well, hey, let's see what kind of music she does. I think you'd actually called out that it was for a show in Nashville, and I've told you that I've kind of gotten into more of my roots with appreciating country music and anything kind of inspired by country, and I looked at it and I liked what I heard.
Oh, thank you so much. I
No,
appreciate that.
of course. Now, and you'd mentioned to me too that you've reconnected a bit and kind of gotten back into that country style, I guess, or getting more into that music. What was that like for you?
Yeah, I kind of had like an interesting journey with that because as I was telling you earlier, like I in high school, I like detached from country music and I was like really getting into like The Cure and like emo music and like pop punk and all this stuff. And even all the way maybe into like 2017, which was when I graduated from tech school. So up until like 20, 21 years old. And uh and then I was in the band Happy Hollow, and we really only did like pop rock music. But
Yeah.
after that, I started with songwriting and just songwriting on my own, and it was so easy for me to like, it just flowed really well to write, the music I grew up listening to, um, and just like certain melodies that have like a little bit of like country like twang to them. I've actually been like saying to people since I've moved to Nashville, and they're like, "What kind of music do you make?" I say, "Y'all alternative."
I love the alternative as a describer. I have a yeah, that's like a go-to for if I'm trying to describe to somebody, like if I tell them I like country music but not like pop country. It's the alternative country, which will get eyebrows raised at you.
Yes, yeah, exactly. I'm like, I don't want to say country, but I'm not like not country, so I'm like, I think y'all alternative is a good like description of what I'm doing here.
I mean, I love it. I think it's perfect. I mean, there's that's actually one of the things I'm constantly looking for is, bands that might fit into that. And so and I'm learning more myself as I do that about just the different genres that I apparently like. Like one that I recently found was murder folk. I didn't realize
Oh,
that was a thing I dig, but so
cool.
so a band I'd never heard until just recently, the Goddamn Gallows, and I really enjoyed that.
Oh,
Um,
sweet.
I've gotten into Harley Poe a bit lately, Amigo the Devil. Um, there's just a lot of really good, like kind of dark country inspired music out there.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know. When I was a kid, I just thought it was all the same thing, and so I was very much I didn't like it. I just refused to like it. And as I've gotten older, I've kind of learned like, okay, it's actually very broad, and there's a lot of good stuff there. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so when you were younger, you said you kind of went the other way? Did you like purposely reject it, or was it just didn't appeal to you?
I think I purposely rejected it because for like I grew up listening to like, George Strait. Like I know every George Strait song to this day. And even more so kind of like red dirt country, like all the, like Willie Nelson, Waylon Jennings, like all of those
Oh
guys
yeah.
because they all moved to Austin. and made that music. So I listen to like that and a lot of Texas country, which is kind of more rootsy and maybe not dark country, but I need to check out those artists because that's something I would be into, the ones that you mentioned.
Yeah, they're really interesting, but like that, that the roots stuff that you're talking about. That, I mean, there is a lot there, and there's the more I get into some of that older stuff, and I've kind of veered towards outlaw country whenever I go into
Yeah.
older music. It's just a lot of fun. And if this is a plug I'll make for anyone who maybe listens to this that hasn't heard it, but Cocaine and Rhinestones. I'm not sure if you ever listened to that podcast.
No.
So uh it's a podcast about the history of country music. Um, Tyler Mahan Coe is the host. He's I think David Allan Coe's son, and he just tells all these stories. And he just did this really long series about George Jones and Tammy Wynette, and it was just fascinating.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I listened to a podcast about their relationship and it's called About a Girl. And so they did a whole episode about Tammy Wynette and like her relationship to um George Jones, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought. And it was so fascinating. So I'll have to listen to this podcast too.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is good form to plug another podcast on your podcast in the middle of your podcast, but I would say anybody who listens to this in the future, please don't stop listening now, but write it down, go back, listen to Cocaine and Rhinestones. Just absolutely phenomenal stuff.
Yes, listen to this first and then go check that out.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, so that's really cool though, to see how your music has evolved. I mean, and so you mentioned that you started out kind of doing more of the pop punk. I mean, do you feel now that that's still a heavy influence on the music you make now? I mean, if you're saying that you're more alternative, I would say that probably, but I don't want to assume. So does it feel like it still has an impact there, or have you kind of tried to purposely veer away from that a bit more?
I feel like that still has like a heavy impact on my like lyric writing and melodies too. It's sometimes like I'll have a song that veers more towards like pop punk like harmonies or melodies, and then sometimes it's country music. I'd say like lyrically, um, I'm mostly influenced by like the emo music I grew up listening to, like my sisters, and like 2000s like indie, like the Postal Service,
Yeah.
Death Cab, Arcade Fire, like those albums are like my bread and butter. And
Yeah.
lyrically, I'm just like, I wish I could write the lyrics that those artists wrote, and I always aim for that. So, yeah.
There's I'll tell anyone comparison is a thief of joy, but it's hard whenever you're pursuing something creatively and you've got something that inspired you or that you love. It's hard not to see, okay, how do I stack up against this? Just and it can be really annoying sometimes because you could write the best thing you've ever written and like, oh my god, this is amazing and I'm so proud of it and I feel so good, and then go back and enjoy something else and like, oh, everything I've done is just terrible and it's horrible
Yes.
and I'm never gonna.
That
But
literally
again,
happens all the time.
yeah, I will say though, again, comparison's a thief of joy. Do not do that to yourself. I think you're very talented, and I think anyone who listens to your music would share that sentiment.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I
Yeah, of
I
course.
definitely do that. Sometimes I'll write something, or I'll try to write something, and I'm sitting down. And I'm like, I'll never write anything good again. Like,
So, well, let me ask. So, you talk about your lyrical content a little bit. Kind of what would you say in your life has really driven your lyrical content the most?
um, you know, I'd say like just relationships, like friendships. I just recently I'm in the works of finishing a song about my mom and her mom,
Mhm.
and my mom's visiting like at the end of the month. I want to finish it before then so she can hear it. Um, so I just really try to pull from like experiences that I've felt, so my music is like the most vulnerable it can be, so other people can relate to it as much as they possibly can, which is weird when you think about it because if it's like a personal experience to me, but I know if you're like being vulnerable, like you're not the only person that's like feeling that way.
Yeah.
So it will speak to somebody else.
Well, and I think that's a really good point. I mean, that's my wife and I have talked about this before, that there are no unique experiences. I mean, we may experience them uniquely, but just about anything that we can say that we've gone through, somebody else has gone through, right?
Yeah.
And so maybe not everyone, but I think there is definitely a way that you can through your music. You can speak to somebody who maybe they may be going through something. They may be experiencing something and just thinking, no one can relate to what I'm going through. No one can understand what this is. And then they hear a song and say, okay, at least one other person does. I mean, I think that's what's so powerful about music. And I don't know how you feel about this, but just that ability to kind of just bridge any divide and bring people together.
Yeah, that's why I fell in love with music. I mean, especially I always loved music as a kid, and especially as I got older into like my teen years, and I was like angsty and like I there were just certain lyrics and certain songs that I was like, "Oh my god, like this is getting me through this time in my life and I will be okay because this person is okay."
Yeah.
And they had the same experience, or it sounds like they had the same experience. So,
It really can go a long way, especially like you said in those teenage years. I think I love music even now as a man in my 30s. I mean, but there just something about when I was a teenager,
yeah,
everything was amplified. It felt like.
100%. Yeah. And is that when you got into music yourself, or had you always kind of been into?
So I would say, late middle school, so early teens, I think, is whenever I started to get more into music and really develop more of my own taste. And so for me personally, like it's still, even to this day, it's still evolving.
Yeah.
I still my go to is my favorite genre has always been hip hop. I love hip hop. I grew up, I was one of the only ones in my family that liked it, but always loved it. And so I pushed back against country when I was younger. And so I'll say this. So when I was a kid, I remember being about maybe 12 or 13 and going on a trip with my parents and my grandparents to the mountains. And this was the mountains of either North Carolina or Tennessee. It was right there on the border. And there was some small town we were staying in or nearby, and they wanted to go downtown. So we went to this downtown area on like a Friday night, and you had bluegrass musicians scattered across the streets.
Oh.
Every old shop, every restaurant had some bluegrass band playing in it. I was miserable. I hated it because and this was me being an arrogant little ass. I purposely did not want to enjoy it, so I didn't let myself enjoy it.
Yeah.
Now I would love that because the older I've gotten, the more I've grown an appreciation for for the fiddle, for the banjo, for bluegrass music, and these things that I wouldn't let myself out enjoy when I was younger.
Yeah.
So that I've got that love of hip hop, so I'm constantly looking for new rap bands. But I've veered way more into the country side of it and the folk side of it, and even the pop music. I used to refuse to like that. Still, I've kind of got into that where I can just appreciate it more. And then also, the rock bands I've always loved. I still, love them.
Yeah.
I think the best thing I ever did when it comes to music was just, getting my head out of my ass and just understanding that you can like stuff, you can appreciate stuff, you can just enjoy it. You don't have to stop
Yeah.
and say, is it technically good or is it just fun?
Yeah, oh my gosh, I completely agree with that because I think it was when I was like in school for music. Um, I don't know, there was just like sometimes like with there was like a pretentious like energy around it. Like it had to be cool. Like you could listen to pop music. But
Yeah.
after I graduated, I was like, you know what? I love Taylor Swift and I think Lady Gaga is awesome too. And like there's like so many great pop records, and if it's a good song, it's like why, you know, restrict yourself from enjoying good music.
Yeah, and I think that goes broadly to most things in life. I mean, I think we
Yeah.
not everyone, and I could be projecting here, but you know how many things do we keep ourselves from enjoying because we get pretentious about it? Whether it's like, oh, I can't enjoy this kind of food because it's not technically or objectively good.
Yeah.
A movie, it's like, oh, this isn't a cinematic masterpiece. No, but there was stuff blowing up and there was a lot of funny dialogue. I mean, why is that not enough?
Yes, yeah. Oh my gosh, I agree with that about movies. I will say movies is like not my strong suit. So I'm like a fan of like rom-coms and all like the classics, but indie movies and stuff I haven't gotten into, but I can appreciate like the silly movies I do love.
Yeah.
And it's just like nice. Like yesterday I watched, I don't know, some like cheesy rom-com on Netflix and I was like, this is really cringy at times, but I'm enjoying it. So
I think more people. I think the world would be a better place if people would just stop and let themselves appreciate things, and also more importantly, let other people appreciate things. If somebody likes something, there's nothing more annoying than someone saying like, "Oh, I watched a new movie over the weekend," and someone else like, "Oh, that movie's trash, right?"
I hate that. Oh my
No.
God. Yeah, no. But it's like, why are you like, can I say the S word?
Go ahead.
Why are you shitting on something that somebody else enjoys? It's bringing them joy. It's like, don't do that. That's lame.
Yeah, just let people like things.
Yeah,
Again,
exactly.
I'm firmly in the camp of let people, live and let live. If they're not hurting anyone, let people live their lives and have a good time.
Yes, 100%.
So, um, let me shift gears just a little bit though. Now, I know one of the things you told me whenever we were communicating prior to this was how your father had influenced kind of your love of food. I wanted to ask a little bit about that. I mean, can you talk to me a little bit more about how your father
Yeah,
how he's impacted your relationship with food or your love of food and just what food means to you, because
yeah.
it sounded to me whenever we were communicating that it's not just you're my favorite kind of person here, is it's not a food as fuel, but food is more of enjoyment.
Yes, yes, 100%. I mean, my both my parents, the love of food and like the act of like sitting down for a meal was always a big deal growing up. Like my parents always had us sit down at the table like every single weeknight at 6 p.m. We were all eating dinner together. Sometimes my dad would cook, sometimes my mom would cook. Thankfully, they were both like amazing cooks. And my sister actually, she's a chef in the Coast Guard now, and she's like an award-winning like fantastic chef. So she was also heavily influenced by my dad because she would cook with him in the kitchen growing up. I was always like off doing something else, and then I would just like eat the food. So I didn't pick up the cooking trait, but they just always made a really good like just choice of like sitting down and enjoying a meal together, and even going out to eat like on a holiday or New Year's Eve. I mean, I was kind of spoiled in that fact, and I'm very thankful for it because we would go to like great restaurants and just eat great food together and just enjoy our time as a family. And I am like deeply, deeply grateful for that growing up and even now. So
So, and it's great to hear that. I mean, the fact that it wasn't just like, oh, we like good food, but like we like good food together.
yeah,
Because I think the together part's the most important.
it is.
I'll always sign off the episodes, trying to encourage people to just go share a good meal with somebody they care about, which isn't just good. Good doesn't have to mean a high end dinner.
No, it doesn't.
And it doesn't have to just be like your life partner. It could just be just go get a slice of pizza with a friend you haven't talked to in a while. I'm a
Yeah,
really firm believer in that. Just it's a great way. Um, it's a great way to just make memories with people.
yeah, it is. Some of my favorite memories, I mean, like being from Texas, sitting down at a good hole in the wall Mexican restaurant with queso and margaritas, and that's all I need.
Yeah,
Like,
that doesn't sound like a bad time, honestly. Queso and margaritas, that really, I could think of a lot worse ways to spend an evening.
you can't beat it. It's really
Yeah. Well, see, now I thought you were going to go the other way with it. Mexican food makes sense. I thought you were going to go the other way with barbecue.
oh,
Um,
yes, yeah. I
see,
love barbecue.
now see, I think this is where you and I would veer away from each other. I love barbecue too, but I'm North Carolina, so I'm big on the pig. I'm assuming you are mostly
Well,
beef.
actually, interestingly enough, I grew up, eating meat, and in the past year, I've become a vegetarian. But I grew up like loving barbecue. Definitely no hate against it. Like, it's great food. I don't know. For a long time, I was like, I think I'm gonna try being a vegetarian and like challenge myself a little bit. So
No.
I've been doing that. Um, but yeah, what kind of barbecue does North Carolina have? Because I'm actually not really sure.
So, all right. So, North Carolina, pork barbecue is king. So,
Okay.
pork shoulders or pork butts. That's that smoked. And then the big thing is going to be the sauces. You have
Mhm.
two different camps that are going to be either vinegar based sauce or mustard based sauce. Some people, I'm personally not a fan of any kind of tomato sauce because it just reminds me too much of ketchup. I like vinegar or mustard. And there's some people that would say it's sacrilegious to like both, but they're both good. But you've got your South Carolina style, you've got your Eastern Carolina style. But yeah, it's predominantly pork here. I know Texas has always been. I've always think of beef. It's like brisket.
Brisket. Yep.
I Pig is my preference, but I mean brisket's great. But you talking about being a vegetarian now? I mean that's the thing too. I think barbecue to me is not just it's not just meat. I mean I think just about anything tastes better with a little bit of smoke added to it.
Yes. Yeah, my dad was in town. I was telling you my dad was in town, I guess it was last week now. Um, and he took me to a steakhouse and I was like, that's fine, Dad. He's gonna be, dad and do his thing. But I
Yeah,
was like, honestly, like steakhouses always have the best sides. And same with like barbecue restaurants, like mac and
yeah.
cheese, the pies, the creamed spinach. Like I'm
Fried
vegetarian,
vegetables. Yeah.
so don't spare me on the cheese. Like
Yeah, that's so and I'll say this too. I know some people do some people get up their own asses about the whole, being a vegetarian thing or and not being a vegetarian but about other people being vegetarian. I don't understand that. Vegetables are good. People that hate on vegetables, you've just had never had a good one. Um,
yeah,
you know,
exactly.
I think most people when they think of vegetables, like Brussels sprouts, for instance, I think most people think of like boiled, flavorless Brussels sprouts that they had when they were a kid. And like we had some in Miami last week that were done with I forget what type of sauce it was, but it was like maybe like a soy glaze. It had like baby coconut mixed in with it, and they were tender and out of this world. I could have, if that had been my entree, I would have had no complaints whatsoever.
Yes, Brussels sprouts are great. Like, I mean, I even like tofu. I try not to do like too many substitutes like that, but tofu is really good, and I liked it even before I was a vegetarian. And there's just so many different ways you can make it like really delicious.
Yeah.
And I love zucchini. I eat zucchini
Yes.
all the time. So
Zucchini is, I think, the perfect vegetable because there really is so much you can do with it. It's great, like mixed in with like a salad or with like a pasta salad. In a one pot dish. My
yeah,
wife will make these shredded zucchini fritters. She'll basically take shredded zucchini mixed with like parmesan, breadcrumbs, and it's so good.
that sounds so good. I need to make this. I was actually on the topic of zucchini. Since you're a foodie, did you watch Stanley Tucci's like Italy show on HBO Max at
I have
any
not
point?
seen this yet, but I've heard it was so good.
It's so good. And there's this episode where he goes to Italy and he tries like this famous zucchini pasta. And all that it is pasta. And then like the chef makes the sauce. It's just like zucchini and Parmesan cheese and like salt. And somehow it turns into like this creamy deliciousness. And Stanley Tucci said it was the best pasta he's ever had. So you should watch it. I need to learn how to make it or just go
So
to Italy eventually.
I'd say both. Probably start with making it and then go to Italy,
Yeah.
just to kind of give it a side by side to see how it is. But yeah, I'm gonna have to watch that because that sounds really good. Because
It's
I've never had zucchini that I didn't like. It's and then with pasta, I mean anything is good with pasta, just about.
yes, yeah, I definitely agree. I love pasta.
Yeah, we I think we're actually planning this week. We're gonna do a pesto pasta, which it's super. It's as simple as just make the noodles and then just mix in some pesto, and then just some grated parmesan and red pepper on top, and it's just dynamite.
Yes. Okay, I need to make that too. I actually tonight I made gnocchi with like some chili onion crunch from Trader Joe's
Love
and
gnocchi.
like garlic. So good.
That we did gnocchi a while back. So I don't know if you ever tried this. Like after boiling them, we've pan fried them before a little bit,
Yeah.
because they get a little bit of texture on them, and
Yeah.
still it's really good. And
Oh,
then
I
parmesan on top. And I will tell you to if you never have like the switching to fresh parmesan, like actually grating it yourself, it's a little more work, but it is so worth it.
ooh, okay. I've always seen that on like TV shows and you know what? I'm gonna do that next time I'm at the store because I'm out of Parmesan anyways.
So if I can influence you no other way, get a block of parmesan and grate it yourself. It is a world of difference.
I'm gonna do it.
Perfect. Um, well, I'll tell you. Let's shift gears just a little bit. We talk about the food part, but the podcast is talking about food, but also loss and grief. Um, I thought you had a really interesting take on that question whenever we were talking ahead of time. So, can you talk to me about how loss, grief, and food, how they kind of tie in for you, and what that connection point is?
Yeah, for me, I've been, blessed enough up until this point in my life to not have lost anyone directly close to me, but both of my parents have, and I actually like talked to them about that before coming on the podcast, and my dad just said like when he and I have another take on this too, with like significant others and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
for my parents, my dad was just like, we just ate dinner together all the time. And after, he didn't really talk too much about, after his mom died, how it affected him, but he did like start talking about one of his favorite dishes, and I could hear that he was like really happy talking
Yeah.
about it. So maybe I should like surprise him and like try and make it, or get my sister to make it. That's she's a chef. And for my mom, so my grandma on my mom's side, she passed away when I was 4 months old.
No.
So I never got to like meet her as an adult or as a kid. I don't have any memories. But my mom said she died really young. She was 56, and which is super young. She died from type 2 diabetes.
No.
And yeah, and so that had a big effect on my mom, just like always wanting to eat healthy, eat right, like make fresh foods for us. And she said, she was like, that's why growing up, we always cooked for you. And like, I learned how to cook. Like, we wanted you and your sisters to eat really healthy and good food and enjoy the good food while we're like all together. And she also said, after she was pregnant with me, she like loved chocolate covered almonds, and she was like, those
Yeah.
got me through postpartum. Like, I was like, those are good, that's valid.
Yeah, I love a chocolate. Honestly, I like an almond period, but yeah, chocolate covered almonds, fantastic.
Chocolate anything. Like,
I can't disagree with that.
yeah. Yeah.
That's interesting though. So I guess so. I have two places I want to go with that. So one, I'm just curious. Whenever you told them that you were going to do a food grief podcast and ask them questions, did they kind of give you side eyes, or were they? Was it a thing that was it there a curiosity there? Was there any kind of interest, or did it? I guess did it make them think a little bit more about that connection?
I think it did. My parents are super like supportive, and they were like, "Oh, like that's so interesting. Like that's a cool podcast to be asked to be a part of." And I was like, "Yeah," and it's like definitely making me reflect too. And so my dad was like, "Oh, he told me like briefly a little bit about, what it was like growing up with his family." And my dad's side of the family is like Italian and Polish, so like food is like a really big part of growing up for him, and cooking.
Yeah.
Um, and then my mom, she was like, "That's so cool that you're being a part of that." And they were like, "Well, you haven't lost anyone, you know, you haven't just experienced that. So, how are you going to approach this?" And I was like, "Well, I was thinking of asking you guys about, your experiences with this." And then I was also telling them, like, I think I'll talk about, like, you know, eating your favorite food with like a significant other, and that relationship ends. Because I think too, like you said it as well, like that's as much as a loss that you have to grieve too. Not as much as like losing someone to death, but like it is, you have to grieve that relationship and the things that you did together. And food is important to me. So like, my partner and I, we'd go out to like sushi restaurants or whatever it was. Um, and so, yeah, that's
Yeah, well, and we're definitely going to come back to that in a second because I agree with you. I think so there there's different forms of loss, and I think most people, I think they would immediately think of death as the main one, which I think you're right. It's the most permanent. It's the one that can have the most maybe I shouldn't say this with 100% certainty, but it's the one that seems like it could have the most long-term impact. You
yeah,
know, but the loss of a friendship, or the loss of a close relationship, or with a significant other. I had an episode a few episodes back talking with someone about them losing their sense of their own identity. These are
Mhm.
all forms of loss, and it's one of these things that I don't think many people talk about it, and it's because it's uncomfortable. It's not a comfortable space to be in.
Yeah.
um I was going to ask you too. You mentioned that your father, he kind of had a look on his face. You could tell he was kind of going to that place. Um, you know, so I wanted to ask, have you ever had a chance to talk with him, just really talk with him about, his mother, and just how food played a part of this, before, what that was like for them. I know you said that it definitely influenced hey, we should eat together as a family. That's important.
Yeah.
Did he go any further than that?
Um, Not really. He's kind of a hard shell to crack sometimes, especially with that stuff.
Fair.
I love him though, but um he did say like growing up and like having those family dinners was super important, especially because he lost his mom so young, and his grandma would always cook too, and like they'd have like the big like meals and like sausage and peppers and like all that stuff,
Yeah.
and I can see like when he's cooking, like and when he's like providing and like cooking for his family, like he gets a lot of joy out of that. So
No.
yeah.
I will tell you, as a dad to an almost 6-year old, there is something really. It's this like this instinctual thing I think to provide, and there's I don't think there's any more basic way of providing for somebody than providing food. Like, okay, there's nourishment, this fuel keeps you moving.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm telling you, whenever I make something that she likes, like when I nail it, there is such a sense of pride there. So
Yes.
so that feeling of, or being able to see that he can tell, like, okay, he really enjoys this cooking aspect. I can tell you this as a father of a little girl, that best feeling in the world. Just the act of actually putting a meal together for her. So if he's never been able to tell you this, I can assure you, means the world to him. You
Oh,
know,
I'm sure it does. And that's so sweet. Like, I can promise you too that it means the world to your daughter.
yeah. The pesto pasta I mentioned, that was something I made that
Yes,
a
yeah.
couple weeks ago, and I gave it to her, and I was a little worried because she's 5 and it's green. I've been down this road
Yeah.
before. I don't I don't know how that's going to go. Bowl was empty. So, and she said, "Daddy, that was really
Oh,
good." It's a couple weeks later. I'm still feeling good about it. I still got the high going from that.
that's so sweet. Because it also is like, it means like she trusts you, especially if it's green and she's 5 years old. It's like, that's a lot of trust to eat something that's green.
Yeah, well, and
So,
we've got the rule in our house of, like, you don't have to like it, you just have to try it. That's I
yeah.
understand there's going to be a lot of foods that she's picky anyway, but there's just going to be a lot of stuff she's 5, she's not going to like. My
Yeah.
only thing with her is I want you to try it, because, and I kind of got the sense that you were introduced to a lot of foods when you were younger. It sounded like it played a big part. So it sounds like you got a variety. That's really important to me too. Is I want her to have a variety of things, because I don't know what she's gonna like whenever she's older, but I want her to
Yeah.
be able to experience stuff and say, like, I've at least tried this before, or I don't want her to palate to be based off just what's in a 100-mile radius of her. I want it to really be anything and everything. It's all fair. Nothing seems gross. That nothing seems too crazy. It's like, well, we we try a lot of different stuff.
Yeah. No, that is so important. And like my parents did that so well. I mean, I ate whatever they ate.
Yeah.
And I mean, I remember my parents like still tell this story. I was like 7 years old. We were at some restaurant and they ordered escargot and they didn't tell me what it was, but I ate it and I was
So,
like, this is great.
what was the reaction whenever you found out what it was?
I asked them because I couldn't remember, but they were like, you were pretty grossed out, but you said it tasted good and you tried it. So I was like, yeah, that's true. And I mean, they had me like, you know, ordering my own little steak at like a young age. I knew how I liked it and everything, and they always bragged on me about that. And there really was never a food I didn't like. Like now I chose not to eat meat, but like up until that, like anything was fair game. Like I really, um, oh, actually, something my dad mentioned. He said um, livers and onions was something that his grandma used to make, and I was like, no.
Uh,
I was like, not for me.
yeah.
So
So I was. I'll give you that one, because so I haven't eaten a lot of liver. I'll admit that. I've tried enough though to know that it's not for me. It's yeah, that's not that one's not for me. I won't judge anyone that likes it, but I'm not gonna ask him to share.
that's valid. That's valid. I think I've tried it once, and it was at this place called the Texas Grill, and my friend's dad was ordering it, and it's like this old fashioned like Texas diner in the town I grew up in, and I tried it, and I was like, nah, nah, I'm good.
But I think it says a lot though. An adventurous spirit to say, oh, you know what, we're gonna give it a shot.
Yeah, you got to, you got to.
So I hope for my daughter that I'm at least, because to me it's not just food, right? Like, I want her to be willing to try different stuff, because the rationale I've given her before is that you've got to try stuff because you never know what you're gonna like, and I'm talking about a bite of pizza or, this chicken dish or a vegetable. I'm hoping that what she takes away from it though is just like life in general. Got to be willing to try stuff.
Yes.
You can't you can't put yourself in a box. I mean, because if you think about yourself, I mean, if you think about the fact that, okay, you're willing to try foods, I mean, you are also willing to move across the country to pursue a dream.
That's
You
true.
know, I don't know how much of that's related, but I mean, it's that same open mindedness, right? Of, okay, I might like this. This might work. I've got to go for it.
Well, honestly, like that's like trying new foods has been something that's been a part of me since I was like so young, I guess. And I've always been a very open-minded person, so that's probably not too far off of a,
Yeah.
of a hypothesis.
Yeah, now I will say I am by no means a psychologist, but hey, yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. So it's got to be some semblance of truth to it.
Something's there. Something's
Yeah.
there.
So let me circle back a little bit because you mentioned the idea of relationships and how that's a sense of loss, and I fully agree with that.
Yeah.
Um, so can you talk to me a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So with relationships, like I've always really appreciated, like, I don't know if it's like an anniversary or something, or just going out and like having a nice meal together to celebrate the day. Like I don't really need
Yeah,
a present, but like I just want to like take time to celebrate whoever it is that I'm with and like us. And so that's always been important to me. And or even just like on finding like a hole in the wall restaurant and like finding some good food and drinks and just enjoying our company. That's like the best quality time I can think of.
yeah,
And yeah, my last partner, we recently broke up, but and it wasn't like a bad breakup or anything like that. But we would always go get sushi together, and that was our thing. Like he loved sushi, and I
yeah.
love sushi. I have not gotten sushi since we've broken up, but I working up the courage. Like,
So is that a purpose? So has it been purposeful to not go get sushi just like because they have that connection of how you associate it?
I definitely it hasn't come up yet, but I know that eventually one of my friends will be like, "Let's go get sushi."
Yeah,
I think when it comes to it, it'll be like a little maybe a little scary because I'll be like, "Oh, am I gonna get like really sad when I'm there, or
yeah,
am I gonna get nostalgic, or am I just gonna like be grateful for the meals that we did share, and the sushi that we did share together?" And there's
yeah.
like a specific place we went to a couple times in Nashville, and I'm like, oh, I haven't been back there yet.
Yeah, so that's the thing too, and so I'll say this. So, like I said, I think that a relationship ending like that or a death. I mean, both loss, right? Both are going to result in grief. Two different things, but I mean, there's a lot of similarity there. One of the things I think that's really helps people is whenever you lose someone, having a chance to talk about it. It's the same thing I think with a relationship. I mean, just it's a whether it's venting, whether it's just talking about the sweet times or the not so sweet times. I think there's a lot of awkwardness with people when it comes to that, where they're afraid to say, tell me about the person, or tell me how you're feeling.
Yeah,
And it's because if somebody tells you that they lost someone, I think there's an inherent awkwardness that we feel for other people, towards other people.
yeah.
So I'll ask you, how are you feeling?
Thank you. Oh, thank you. um, the first couple months of it, it was pretty rough. It was pretty
Yeah,
sad, and you're getting used to, not talking to somebody every day that you talk to for a long time. That's hard. Um, but recently, like I've been lucky enough to like my mom and I are really really close, so I've been calling her a lot, talking to her a lot about it. Um, both I have like two really great sisters that I've been able to lean on, and um they're 10 and 13 years older than me, so they're able to like kind of give me insights and like advice,
yeah,
and which I'm like so grateful for. And then I just like the friends I've made here and have here, um they've just been really supportive and you know have had my back. So I think now I'm on the other side of it, and I'm
yeah.
feeling like, okay, like I think that was for the best, and I'm not like super sad every day anymore. So that's good.
I'm glad to hear that, because I mean, I think that's something most people can relate to, or everyone can relate to, is just a breakup. And I even now, I've been my wife and I've been together for 10 years, but I mean, I can think of relationships from before that. Where I have memories that I tie to food, and so
Yeah.
it's one of those things. It's there. I will say, years separated from it, I've I don't mean this in a mean way. I've moved on and found someone better,
Yeah.
better suited to me. Um, but any bad memories I've had maybe with a food or a place because of someone, I've been able to replace those in just much happier ways now. And
Yeah.
also even the happy ones, yeah, I don't know, you get to still store them in the back. I mean, and I think with distance and time, I mean, they become something you can appreciate.
Yeah.
But and I don't really know where I'm going with this because I don't think I don't think the pain wears off a bit. You've heard time heals all wounds. I think that is there is some truth to that.
Yes,
But
I definitely agree with that. And sorry, my cat he's got the zoomies. So
no, that's okay. I've got two cats that probably getting the zoomies right now outside the office, so no worries.
no, I agree with that. And that's good to know because when you're in the thick of it, as like,
Yeah,
in your 20s, you're like, oh, this is the worst pain. Like, oh my God, I get over this. And thankfully I have music. Like I've been writing so many songs and a lot of my friends are songwriters. So we like write songs together about it or like their loss or their breakups. And but yeah, that is my sisters kind of told me the same thing. They were like, time heals everything, and you'll be okay. And I'm like,
yeah,
okay.
and and I think the benefit too, and this is one where you can be thankful for you ended on it didn't end on negative terms or on a in a mean or bad spirited way. That right there. It's a sign of maturity, I think. So I
Yeah.
think it's something to be appreciative of that. You're able to end it that way.
Yeah. I respect him and, we had a really good friendship. And maybe one day, like, if we ever like ran into each other, wouldn't be like, I have to walk the other way. Like it would be friendly. And I think that maybe wouldn't have happened so much if I was in my earlier 20s, like if I was like 20, 22. But because we're both, he's 26, I'm turning 25, like we're able to be more mature about it, which is nice.
And that's great.
Yeah.
I think that does go a long way. So, you mentioned that you've been doing a lot more writing. Has writing proved therapeutic for you?
Yeah, always, always. If I'm feeling any sort of way about something, um, I'm always like typing notes into my phone and into the
Yeah,
notes app and like singing into my voice memos and thinking of ideas. And then like when I have that time or like when that inspiration hits, I'll sit down and maybe come up with something like on the spot, or I'll look back to something I wrote in a notes app and kind of write something from there. But that if I'm feeling like anxious or sad and I write something and can like get something out of that feeling and reflect on it, that is truly the best feeling. And then I like can sleep well that night and I feel good and like that feeling got out and I'm like so grateful that I can do that. I don't
that
know what
is.
I would do if I didn't.
That's great. I would encourage anyone, uh, practice some form of like art or expression or something, just because I don't think it's healthy to walk around with everything bottled up. I mean, I
Yeah.
think, whether it's writing, whether it's, performing, whether it's, painting, I think having some type of outlet for what's in your head and your heart, I mean, I think is really important.
Yeah,
Um,
it really is. I don't know what I would do without it. I'm so grateful for it.
and the fact that you've been able to turn it into, not just a passion, but something you're pursuing as a career. That's incredible.
Thank you. I definitely challenged myself whenever I was I graduated high school when I was 17 because I feel like I was actually supposed to be like held back, but I wasn't. So I was like a little bit of a baby, the youngest in my class, but I graduated. So I was 17 and I was like, I'm going to go to school for music. And like, I'm going to, because when you're young too, like, and I've tried to keep that, that naivety, that's a word, right?
Yeah,
Naivety,
we're gonna say yes.
being naive. Um, and I think being naive has like a plus to it in the sense when you're like young and you're like I can do this, and
Yeah,
so when I was 17, I went to school for audio engineering, and I was like, I'm going to do this and it'll work out. And like, I had this a plan. And ever since then, I mean, like, audio engineering is the reason I've, you know, become a musician, a better musician. And I've met so many great people. And that's how I know people here. And it's, I'm just always try to hold on to being like a little bit naive to the sense that like I can get to some sort of whatever goal, like my goal, you know? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's
No,
rambling
that
a
makes
little
perfect.
bit.
I mean, I think is, and I get to see this with my, with my child. I mean, like, so something as simple as if she sees a TV show that has bad guys on it, she says, "You know what I'd do if a bad guy broke in our house?" And she just starts punching the air. She says, "I'd kick him, I'd hit him, and then I'd call the police."
Oh, she sounds awesome.
Oh, she's great. But I love that's that kind of naivety of like, I can just do this. Like
Yeah,
there's no self doubt. There's no, I don't know if I. It's just I can do this. And the thing is, we beat that out of kids. As a
yeah,
society, we beat that out of kids, and we get them to not, if they say, "Well, I want to do this," well, that's going to be difficult, right? Or that's going to be hard.
yeah,
If so, instead of listing all the reasons why, it could work, it's we go straight to all the reasons why it may not work. So I
yep,
think hanging on to some of that. I mean, learning, okay, this is how you make it, in the world. But I mean, keeping that sense of, okay, I can be an adult and have responsibilities and take care of my, pay my bills, but I can also still follow this thing that I'm passionate about that just like drives me, pushes me.
yep.
You got to keep that.
Yeah, I read something somewhere and it was like if you're feeling lost in your 20s and you're like, I don't know what to do and like what am I supposed to do with my life? It's like go back to the thing that made you super happy and that you were good at when you were a kid and follow that because that's most likely what you're maybe supposed to do, you know,
I love that.
if you haven't found that in your adulthood. Um so I've I've been like lucky enough to have always had music and like have known that all like ever since I was a little kid. I was like music is it. And but I think it's good advice for people that maybe don't know that either.
Yeah, I love that. I've not heard that, but that, I mean, that makes a lot of sense because I think that, your 20s. I remember this, it can be an especially difficult, really weird time of feeling like, okay, I'm an adult now legally. I can vote, I can buy a gun, I can rent a car, I can do all the adult stuff that you can possibly do, but I have no clue what the hell I'm doing.
Yep.
And I mid 30s, I'm like, I've got some semblance of a clue what the hell I'm doing.
We're
But
all just
uh,
winging it.
yeah, that's the thing. I think most people really are. They may not admit it, but we're all just winging it. I think, but you get a better sense of it. But I mean, I love the idea of embrace the thing that makes you happy.
Yeah.
Start with that. Start with what makes you happy, and then kind of build from that. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. I 100% agree.
that's wonderful. Um, okay, so I want to go back to one more food thing
Yeah.
before we wrap up. But you told me that chicken piccata was a very special meal for you. Can you
Yes.
talk to me about that a bit more?
Yes. So growing up, my dad and my mom, they both would make it like a little bit different ways. But they would make like chicken piccata, and it was like it had like a lemon sauce, and it was slightly breaded, and they would always top it with capers, and so it was like lemon, garlic, capers, and then like the chicken. It was so good, and that was my favorite dish. Like I would look forward to chicken piccata night, and even and now I'm like, I need to figure out how to make this into a vegetarian thing because it's so good. And I've tried to make that sauce, but like do it in like a pasta way.
Yeah.
I ruin it every time. Like it's it's always like too greasy or not creamy enough. And I'm like, I can never get it right. And I just need to like text my dad and be like, what the heck do you do? Like, how do you make this? I should
I
have asked
so
him here.
I'm gonna go back to this. I'm gonna play the put on the dad hat here. Have him next time you're with him in a kitchen together. Tell him, what ingredients do I need. Have him walk you through it.
I think I will. I will.
And don't be afraid too to purposely do something wrong just to make him redo it. Because like that part, like that'll be fun. Cooking with your kid is a lot of fun. I think, and I can only speak for the first couple of years. I think regardless of age, I think it would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think that's really cool. I mean, because you think about the memories you have of just like eating that with your family. And now, if you look to your future, just think that's something that you can, once you figure out, okay, what makes it work just right, that's something you can bring to future relationships. If you have kids in the future, that's something you can continue to carry on.
Yes, I've been thinking about that because I cook for myself, but I don't think I would like cook for anybody else because I don't do it super well. But I want to get good at that so I can cook for like a partner and have this like cool skill and eventually like if I have kids like, cook them a really good meal so they can have the same experience I had.
Yeah, I think there's something, it all comes down to sharing. Sharing a meal. You talked about like eating together. I mean, but there's just something really fun about that.
Yeah,
Um,
100%.
I may, I may be biased and I may I may focus too much on it personally, but no, there's something really fun about it, and I think it's a great thing. You mentioned earlier that you haven't experienced a whole lot of loss in your life, and that you were lucky in that regard, and I think so. But I think too. I mean, it seems like you've got a mindset of appreciating, who you have while you have them, and making those memories, and it sounds like your parents and your family really reinforce that. I mean, and from an early age.
Yeah, they have. I love my family so much and like my sisters too. Tara's the chef and Nikki's the oldest sister and she's like a mom now herself. She actually just had a kid last week and
That's
I just
awesome.
I yeah, and my fondest memories are with like my family going out to eat at dinners or like Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving's my favorite holiday because
Same.
I get to be with my family and eat food and my family I grew up in like a little cabin and so for like odd time, I grew up in this little cabin that has this cute porch. And my mom would always set up Thanksgiving dinner on the porch because in Texas it's not cold. So we would sit on the porch and eat dinner. And it's always so nice. Like the sun's out, the whole family's there. And we're just like, it's just a good time. It feels so good.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
And I'm with you. Thanksgiving to me that's the top holiday. It's
That's the best.
you got your food, you got your family, and it's got the most important. You can nourish your body and your soul. I really
Yep.
I really do feel that way because in a lot of, for me, a lot of cases growing up. I mean, Thanksgiving was like the one time of year, Thanksgiving or Christmas, like the only times that you get everybody together. Because we would do extended family. I had cousins like, I'll see you next Thanksgiving, I guess. Maybe Christmas, depending on how we alternate, with the sides of the family. But it was amazing. And now we've gotten to host. We got to host it last year.
Oh,
Well, it was cool. So we bought our house August of last year. So we actually just hit yesterday was a year in our new house. Um,
congrats. Oh my gosh.
Thank you. Um, but so we had originally planned that it would just be the three of us for Thanksgiving, and then it was okay. We'll invite one family member, and then all of a sudden it turns into we're hosting for my wife's entire family. So
Oh my gosh.
yeah, so it's like okay, we gotta hope this works out, and I'm talking, this plan came together as of a few days before Thanksgiving. Like it was probably end of the week before where we realized like, okay, we're hosting for everybody, and it's I'm talking maybe five extra people here, but still there's a little bit of pressure there.
Yeah, there's a lot. But Thanksgiving dinner holds a lot of pressure. Like
Yeah,
it's my favorite holiday, but when you're cooking it, it's like the turkey has to be great, it's like the sides and it has to be
better be
on
on
time.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's awesome though.
I'm gonna say this, so I haven't thought about this since last year. So you're helping me think of a memory. I appreciate that because I mean, it was our first time hosting, Thanksgiving, and it was such a good time because it was kind of last minute, but it came together, and it was awesome, and it was fun because we had a lot of really good food. We had like the traditional American Thanksgiving stuff. My mother in law made some pork that was just not something I grew up with, but something I would fight somebody for in a heartbeat now. It was great. It was especially, the first Thanksgiving we got to celebrate in the house, it was just a lot of fun.
Oh,
Um, yeah, thank you. I haven't thought about that in a while, so I appreciate that. You
That sounds so special. Thank you for sharing it.
Yeah, it was great, and it's something we've talked about maybe making that a tradition. So in another couple months we might be hosting again.
I hope you do. That sounds
Yeah, and
awesome.
we'll make sure we're more prepared this time.
You did more prepared this time.
Yeah,
A little less stressful.
yeah. But it's one of those things. Like it's one of those. It's very much it works out because things kind of always work out. So
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
hindsight, I don't think if we had to make frozen pizzas or order Chinese food, I don't think anybody would have been too upset about it. It's again, it goes down to the people you're with. But that being said, I'm glad like all the stuff that we wanted, it worked out.
Yeah, me too. That's awesome. Well, I hope you get to host it again this year.
I appreciate it. Um, well, so I guess let me ask: is there anything else you wanted to share whenever you think about grief, lost food? Anything else that stands out to you?
Um, just for like, the listeners appreciate like all the meals that you share with somebody, even if it's not a super fancy restaurant, like anywhere it is, just take it in and like be in the present moment. Like that's what I'm always challenging myself to do is like
Yeah,
stay in the present moment. And even more so when I'm with like my dad or my family members, just or loved ones, just enjoying those moments because it's super important. And it just also it's nice to reflect on them too, like the past and like growing up and family dinners and stuff like that. So that's all I have to say.
I you say that's all. What I think that's perfect. That's enough. I mean, I think you summed it up. A good meal, whatever it is, with people you care about.
Yeah,
What more could you ask for?
no, nothing. That's one of the best things about life.
That's awesome. Well, hey Virginia, thank you so much for joining. I think that's all we got today. However, I think you are going to play us out with a song here in just a few minutes.
Yes, yeah.
Awesome. Okay, well we'll be back with the song here in just a few minutes. Thanks again to Virginia for joining and sharing about her music, food, and relationships. You can find her on Instagram and TikTok at Virginia Louise Music. Virginia VirginiaLouise Music, all one word. You can also find her on YouTube and Spotify by searching Virginia Louise, and I'm going to link to all of that in the show notes. So please go listen to her music and especially her new single, Lust for Life. You can also follow Our Last Meal on Twitter and Instagram at Our Last Meal Pod, or visit us at ourlastmeal.com. If you're interested in being a guest on the podcast, you can reach out by clicking the Share Your Story button on the website, or reach out through DMs through Instagram, Twitter, however. Normally, I'd end it here by telling you to share a meal with someone you love, but this week, Virginia's going to play us out. All right, so thank you again for listening to Our Last Meal. Again, our guest, Virginia Louise, she's going to play us out with a song today. So, Virginia?
Awesome. So the song is called What's Changed. It's a newer one, and it'll probably be on Spotify and Apple Music by the end of the year. Hope you like it. I guess I'm a little hurt. You don't say my name like you used to. When I see your face in the review, your hands aren't in the air, waving like I'm used to. What's changed? I follow your face, following your gaze. That gaze makes me believe that something's changed. Can hardly tell we're breathing the same and now, the same and now. It's a little less sweet. It's harder to breathe. I know that I've changed into a woman you're not used to. Always on the go. A life I've gotten used to. That gaze makes me believe that something's changed. Can hardly tell we're breathing the same air now, the same air now. It's a little less sweet. It's harder to breathe. I'm not afraid of being lonely. I'm afraid of losing you. So what's changed? Aren't you supposed to stay? There'll be growing pains. My constant is meant to be you, babe. Can't go back now, 'cause it's too late. It's too late. It's a little less sweet. It's easier to breathe.
Virginia, that was great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. I appreciate you being on.
You too. Thanks.